I need to continue. I know I'm a little long-winded.
Continue.
The private sector has also had a significant role in supporting this project. We needed vehicles. We have to transport the team, the ops team, back and forth to the gullies every day. Kia has a partnership with the Ocean Cleanup internationally, and their local distributors here in Jamaica, ATL Motors. We got 2 vehicles to support the project. When the project started and we didn't have the offloading site yet, the barriers came in, the boat came in, and we needed a location to be able to put things together. And we approached Spectrum Roofing because they're right on the harbor as well. And they allowed us to use their property to pull everything together. And then when we moved to our site at the UDC property, which I don't think I mentioned, I will mention that. When we moved to our offloading site, we had a building that needed a roof for our storage unit. They donated the roof and installed it for us. Did I mention UDC earlier?
You did.
Okay, just check it. Okay.
Anybody else?
Yes, I'm on a roll. I'm on a roll. Digicel Foundation, a partner foundation. So we use the offloading site as a visitor center. We do tours with students all the time at that location. Digicel Foundation gave us a grant so that we could spruce up the location even more and make it more interesting and exciting for the children. And I could go on and on. I know the VM Foundation is here. Yes, and they've been a partner with all of us on our beach cleanups over and over. So I'm most grateful for that. But I think collaboration does start at home, and I want to thank the foundation team who worked tirelessly to keep this project going. And our consultants, MDK Consulting, which is Diaka Morrison and Kasim Morrison. They're not going to stand up, but you can stand up. Anyway, they are my right and left arm. They helped me with strategy. They helped me with the finances. They've done an incredible job with this project as well. And then last but not least is my parent company, Grace Kennedy. They have the contribution we've gotten from Grace Kennedy has been invaluable because it is in kind, but the truth is we have been able to tap into legal resources, just even how you custom broking and without all the stuff that we've had to bring in, HR, risk, compliance, I can go on, and they have just supported us through the whole process, and I am very, very grateful for all of the collaboration that has taken place, and I know that's what's made a difference with this project.
Sure, you don't want to.
I think I'm
I think a round of applause for all the collaborators. And Caroline, I was lenient with you, and I hope the other presenters don't think I will do the same with them. But it's important because a project of this magnitude and scale sometimes might intimidate any single or one person. But what we are hearing is persons with their individual interests and skill set. If you contribute that piece, then together those individual pieces make the project. I have one last question for you. Earlier in your presentation, before you were acknowledging, you mentioned community. You said that. And ultimately, this project has to be about people.
Yes.
It's not about the technology only. It's not about even all the partners. It's about the people the project will serve. So tell us a little bit about how communities have been engaged. Have they been engaged? And certainly, how have they been empowered as part of this whole project?
Absolutely, and that actually leads to our third role on the project, which is we are responsible for coordinating outreach.
Okay.
We knew from the onset that we could not build a sustainable project without strategic outreach to the communities within the immediate environment and beyond.
Right.
And we also know that awareness drives change. So whether we're pulling in people to do tours of the gullies and the barriers or outreach to schools, we knew that was critical. So how did we do it? So first of all, one of the values of Grace Kennedy is that of trust. And we built the relationships on trust. We have not gone into any community without reaching out to the Member of Parliament, without reaching out to the councillors, without reaching out to the community leaders, any key partners or stakeholders like the fishers. We don't go into a community and it's put in a barrier until we have gotten their support and buy-in. And their guidance too. They've actually given us some really good insight into what to do. One of the programs we're particularly happy about is our environmental warden program. We have 12 environmental wardens, and these are persons who live in communities that border these gullies that are polluted. By the way, they are not necessarily the polluters of these gullies. They are the sufferers who live beside these gullies, but they have worked tirelessly also to educate the persons in their community. They do spot talks, they set up presentations for the schools in the community. One of the stories we've gotten is that, you know, we went and did a presentation in one of the schools and the parents came back quarreling and saying, my kids know I have to make sure I separate my plastics because they won't allow me to just throw it away the way I used to. But that's the kind of work that they have done. And they are here. There's several of them here today, and I'd love you to stand as well, our environmental wardens.
Could our warden stand?
Mr. Booth, he is the supervisor of the wardens, and some more right there. They are the unsung heroes who work day and night. And one of the really great outcomes of the work that they have been doing is we've had now, I think, 32 new persons in the communities that they're in separating plastics. They're now collecting plastics as a business and selling it to RPJ. So that's very, very encouraging. But we have been committed to inclusive partnerships. Since 2022, we've actually organized 27 beach cleanups. I pray one day I don't have to do a beach cleanup, but we've done 27 of them. We've had over 4,000 plus volunteers come out to these cleanups that we've had. We've had 28 private sector companies and 30 government agencies participate in our outreach tours. We've engaged over 3,500 youth through our school tours and educational presentations. And even the employees that work at Clean Harbors Jamaica are members of communities that are living close to either the harbor or to these gullies. But in addition to that, we realized we had to get really creative. So, you know, these are the immediate persons who are participating in our activities, but we also thought, okay, let's get a website up and going. So we have a beautiful website, Kingston Harbor, I'm going to get it wrong anyway.
Don't worry, we'll have it displayed before the end of the lecture.
We have a beautiful website where, you know, you get all the data and all the information on the project. We have a social media page, and what we've done is collab with the Ocean Cleanup and with Grace Kennedy and with Clean Harbors Jamaica, and some of our posts have reached over 350,000 people in one post. So that's getting our word out there. We launched a great mangrove cleanup in 2024, and we saw 6 private sector companies cleaning up 6 sites simultaneously during Earth Week. And then along with that, we came up with this idea. We said, okay, so how are we going to reach the business people and the elites of this country? And we decided we would plan a trash tournament. So we had a trash tournament with the yacht owners and our fishermen, and they competed against each other, and it was amazing.
And that was to collect trash?
So part of the strategy was we have beach cleanups where we can reach land yes. areas, but how we're going to reach the mangroves and the keys, like Refuge Key, that still gets plastic. How we're going to reach there? And we thought, okay, let's get them out in their boats. And on that day, we collected over 18,000 pounds. And it was just a great competition. And unfortunately, last year, we weren't able to do it because of the hurricane. It was supposed to be in November last year. But we will do it again this year. And we are already getting calls, you know, for people asking, when is it going to be? So that was pretty cool. And then the last couple of areas where we've seen ourselves go from Jamaica to global is the ocean cleanup in 2024 got funding through Mr. Beast's Team C's program. And Mr. Beast has the most subscribers on YouTube. He has 650 million subscribers.
Just in case, or
I have
don't
like
know who
one.
Mr. Beast might
So
be.
his team came to Jamaica and they did a whole video on the program, which was wonderful. And then in addition to that, last year, CBS television actually did not just one, but 2 programs on the project. So they looked at the operators in one episode, and then they looked at our outreach program on the second, on a show called The Visionaries with Zay Harding, you'll see him in a little bit. So that was really great to see the project go to a global stage. And then the last thing I would share about this whole issue of collaboration and outreach and the community.
Right.
The community is that when we started this project, the Ocean Cleanup said, we are a tech company. You want to do outreach? Have fun. Do whatever you want to do. But we are about the tech. And now to see them, now to know that they have gotten learnings from the Jamaican program and from the Harbor Project, and recognize that no, they will not go into any country without making sure that they have a strong community advocacy program. And to see our partners evolve and grow and learn from us here locally has been really exciting as well.
Thank you, Caroline. I think it's very fascinating. We started with concept, we moved to collaboration, and we are here now at community. It is really good to see how the project has evolved. I think we should turn our attention to a short video about the project's outreach and community engagement efforts.
Grace Kennedy Foundation has begun plans to negotiate a partnership for sustainable development to clean up the Kingston Harbor.
It's clear that there are private sector partners who are willing to help.
Also have to finally, I'd say, invest in the best science, in the best data, in the best technology.
This harbor that we speak of was in many ways always a national treasure.
It's a project that helps the environment, so we are excited about this project as well. It's not about just work, but we are excited to see what is being done, to our community, to our environment, so that we ourselves can benefit as well.
We're very proud of our offloading site. We have developed that site from an old dumping ground, camping ground. We've made a lot of effort to make the site not look like a waste site.
So we think it's really important to start with the children, start with the young ones. And so these kind of basic lessons for children will become habits when they become adults. And that's what we want to do. And we think we can really change the world with that approach.
Your vision and support are creating real and measurable change. It should be a source of tremendous pride for everyone there, and keep up the amazing work.
Thank you again, Caroline. And I don't want you to run off. Stay here even as we transition into another part of our lecture. So we have heard about how the Kingston Harbor Cleanup Project evolved, starting with a bold vision and certainly coordinated national initiative. We've heard that it is built on partnership, on planning, and certainly on persistence. But the truth is, turning vision into reality, especially for a project of this nature, clearly also required innovation and adaptation. And so I think from the very beginning, what we are hearing is that this project became a kind of a real-time learning experience. Lo and behold, and perhaps we should not be surprised, Kingston's gullies presented unique engineering and operational challenges, the kind that would test the project's conceptualizers, have them wondering if they really knew what they were getting themselves into, and certainly the kinds of challenges that would demand continuously evolving solutions through testing, refinement, and incorporation of local expertise. Well, To help us understand how technology has been adapted and local expertise and innovation has been applied in the Harbour project, it is now my pleasure to introduce our next presenter. He is the Managing Director of Clean Harbours Jamaica Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my namesake, Michael McCarthy. Thanks for joining us on stage, Michael.
Thank you for having me.
So, when people think about the Kingston Harbour Cleanup Project, I think they picture some of the things Caroline spoke about. They picture things like a beach cleanup, or perhaps a site some people might have seen moving through the harbour, and I think Caroline mentioned it again, a small conveyor belt vessel, which I think was called the Interceptor Tender, I believe. But truth be told, the operation is far more extensive than that. I'm going to ask you to walk us through the different technologies and systems being used throughout the project and tell us, how do they actually work together to stop waste from entering the harbour?
Well, thank you, Prof, for that great introduction and that explanation. But, you know, you're right. When people think about the Kingston Harbour project, they really do visualize and conceptualize first the interceptor tender. You know, they see this conveyor vessel out in the water doing what it's supposed to do. But the truth is that, you know, by the time the waste actually reaches the vessel, a lot has already transpired, and the work actually begins at the gullies, right? So, you know, we have 19 gullies that were set out by the project, you know, the research that Professor Webb and her team had done. They found that there were 19 pollutants that led out into Kingston Harbour. And we are choosing to do, you know, they initially were supposed to be doing 13. We did some modifications, and now we're at 11 gullies are what we're supposed to be targeting. We currently have 9 deployed already, and we're about to embark on our 10th. And I think that in itself speaks to a lot. And you mentioned tech. Now, there are various forms of technology utilized on this project. You know, we have the Interceptor Tender, which is the small vessel that you've seen.
That's the vessel,
right? That's the conveyor vessel, you know, that's out there. We have the Interceptor barriers, which were, so the Interceptor Tender was actually designed and brought here to work in tandem with the Interceptor barriers. You know, it was designed to latch on and self-harvest and self-offload by just how it was structured and designed. We also have the newer vessel, the upgraded one, which you've seen on the videos, the Guardian 1, which was, you know, brought in place because they needed, and we realized, you know, this whole thing needed change. You know, we thought, okay, everything is going to come, it's going to work as it should be, but we had to ramp up. So we have the Guardian 1, and we also have the Interceptor Guard, which is a newer barrier that came on board as well to follow, which works along with the Guardian 1 as well. And we also have excavators that we utilize. But how does it all work together? So you have the barriers, and the barriers essentially, you know, guide and trap the waste. You have the Guardian 1 or the Interceptor Tender going to retrieve the waste and transport it back to our offloading site facility, where the monitoring and waste management systems ensure accountability, you know, for interception to disposal, to ensure that proper, you know, steps are taken for the waste as it's collected. And then you have the excavators that harvest the debris at the barriers when the debris is inaccessible by the boats, because we have found that we have to keep changing things, right? We have to keep adapting, which I'll speak on shortly. And you know, it's it's together as they operate that, you know, they create this network system of, you know, that prevents the waste from entering not just the Kingston Harbour, but the wider Caribbean Ocean. And I think it's this layered approach coupled with the strategies that has been key to this project's success. And, you know, not only does it demonstrate that effective pollution prevention requires a whole ecosystem to operate, but, you know, it's not just about the tech, as Caroline has been saying, it's about the people and the local processes working in unison to, you know, really achieve this success.
Fascinating. But it's clear, you know, even watching the videos, that installing and operating all this technology in the Kingston Harbour has not come without its challenges, and I think you would be there right at the forefront of the challenges. And as much as we want to hear about the challenges, I'm really keen to hear about the kind of key local adaptations and innovations that you have had to introduce to overcome some of these challenges, especially for our unique gullies in Jamaica.
Well, challenges. We haven't been short of challenges, and I think, Caroline mentioned that when they were trying to select an operator for the project, she says she found the perfect partner, and that wasn't by chance. I mean, Clean Harbors Jamaica Limited, combined with the partners and everybody on board, we have over 25 years of marine experience. We have had experience in all ranges, which, kind of pivoted us to become somewhat leaders in the marine waste management industry and how we operate. And I think operating in Kingston Harbor required days upon days, sleepless nights of just innovation and adaptation. And that came about because, our partners, the Ocean Cleanup, who were so gracious to have brought this technology here, really thought that it was a plug and play. They thought, one size fits all. They've been doing this for some time. They had other projects that they were operating, though they were young as the projects were young. They were coming to Jamaica and they thought, all right, same thing. They're going to provide a technology, we're going to use it, we're going to operate it, and that notion quickly changed. They realized that it was definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution because no two gullies within our Kingston Harbor are alike. Each gully was, we had to go back to the drawing board. The first barrier that they applied, I think it was Raytown, and in just trying to set up those barriers, I remember myself and the rest of the team, we were out there for days, in the sun trying to put this thing, there. It looked good on paper. They presented it to us, everything looked nice. When we all started opening the containers, setting out everything, we realized, wow, it's not a plug and play. And we put the barriers in, or we put the barrier in, and we realized that we had to adapt, we had to change it up. We had failings, but what success without a failure? And to be honest, to better demonstrate this, I think we should try and take a walk through some of our different deployments so you can get a feel of just how we had to.
Please, some of these unique.
Right. So, as you're looking at the slide, you'll see in the top left-hand corner, you'll see, so that's Kingston Pen. And that barrier never always looked like that. It started out originally with the interceptor tender barriers, which we call the Superman. And it got that affectionate name because of the shape of the booms. So the barriers itself, the flotation devices, resemble the insignia of the Superman emblem. And so everybody used to call it, the Superman. We, upon installing this barrier, we quickly realized that it was heavily impacted by not just wind, but ocean currents and stuff. And again, we would have had some failures. So we went right back to the drawing board and we said, listen, we have to do something different. So we switched out and we changed over to the interceptor guards, which you see there now, which are these more robust cylindrical booms, foam-filled, counterweighted, heavy duty. And these were moved more upstream to prevent the impacts of the wind and the weather conditions on the barrier. And that proved successful because Kingston Pen's barrier has been in place since we switched out, and it stood its test. I mean, we didn't get a direct hit of the hurricane in Kingston, but that was one of the barriers that, when all the other barriers were getting battered from the weather conditions, remained intact. And, this image above, as I said in the top left, will just show you that adaptation and innovation led the barrier to become more resilient. It now yields so much more debris as can be seen. We can move on again to another barrier, Mountain View.
Which one is that?
So we actually don't have Mountain View on it.
Okay.
But in the lower left-hand corner, I have a very interesting story to tell you. So as you'll see, it's an entire car with the rims intact, everything. All that was missing was the driver. He didn't report it at the police station. I'm not sure why, but he decided to, somebody sent this car. So Mountain View's gully is a little different. It's sloped at a very interesting angle, and what that causes is high water velocities. We're talking about storm surge waters coming down when we get rain bombs. And rain bombs are essentially what they're called, bursts of rain that we don't expect, that just comes out aggressive, out of nowhere. And in September last year, we had this lovely motor car decide to come and pay us a visit. and it rolled down the gully, full speed ahead, ripped right through the barrier and ended up at the mouth. And we had to go back to the drawing board and, just reevaluate. So Mountain View is one of the barriers that we've had to continuously keep innovating and adapting. We've now had the installation of a secondary barrier at Mountain View, and I think we're looking at a third, just to show you how much we have to adapt for that one. And I mean, we can speak about my Achilles heel, the thorn in all of our sides on the project, especially mine, Sandy Gully. That gully, Caroline affectionately calls it the beast. It was something that we spoke about from the inception of the project. That was always on everybody's mind. How are we going to achieve Sandy Gully? What are we going to do?
Top right.
That's the top right.
The top right
and interestingly, so the story below it, which is the lower right, I have a story for that one as well, which is Sandy Gully. But so Sandy Gully, to speak about the magnitude of this gully and just how we had to adapt, this gully is 2,889 feet wide. It's the largest gully on the island. It spans thousands of feet and runs through entire central Kingston. Almost all the gullies lead into this and pour out into the Kingston Harbor. So it brings the most pollution down. And to innovate and adapt that barrier, we had to come up with not just a regular design. As I've been explaining to you guys, we've tried simplicity, but this gully required so much more innovation. So to keep something of this magnitude in place, we had to develop 16-ton anchors that were locally built. And to give it, 16 tons, we're talking about a tanker. So we had to design an anchor the weight of a tank, and that was on either side of the gully. We had to dig a hole to bury this anchor, which was about 15 or 16 feet deep, about 20-something feet long, and about 8 or 10 feet wide. The size of a good swimming pool. And then we had to compound it and pile debris on top of it with the hoops. We had to connect 6-ton chains, which are, what we have on ships, very large shipping chains, connected to 3-inch stainless steel cables. And to get the barrier in place and secure it, we had to have an excavator and a tractor on one side, and the same thing on the other side, just to pull it, to get it across, to ensure that it was locked in place. So, these are all the innovations and adaptations. But, perhaps the greatest innovation, though, has been that of the local expertise. Through the years of our operatings and the learnings, the team has really transformed the technology from just a mere imported solution to something that is now fits. Yeah, it's now locally adapted. It works for us. And we still have to keep modifying it daily because, continually evolving systems, specifically in Kingston, require not just an environmental, but an operational shift. And, it becomes a day-to-day learning experience. And it's this culture of innovation, continuous improvement that has been a key driver, as I said, for this project's success.
We really have to applaud local ingenuity and local innovation as embodied in Michael and his team. But the other thing that I hear when we are talking is that this is a live learning process. You learn as you go along. If you look back, what have been some of the more important technical or maybe operational or even other kind of lessons that the team has learned so far?
Well, I think the biggest lessons learned, or one of the biggest lessons we've learned, is that technology alone cannot solve our environmental problem. The actual people do. So every challenge, every operational adjustment, everything required a team that was willing to learn and adapt and improve as we went along. But before I actually go along, since I'm mentioning team, I'd like to recognize the team that actually made this possible. Yes. Without them, it would just be me out there driving the boat, collecting the garbage. So
absolutely.
My Clean Harbors team that is here, can you guys stand? Thank you. There's a lot more of them, but they all weren't able to make it tonight, I think that I'd also like to acknowledge, our partners at the Ocean Cleanup who have worked closely alongside us and have allowed us to really just, get there. They've never left our side. They've always been working alongside us. They've learned with us, grew with us, as Caroline has said. And I think definitely it was very important. So, many of these innovations that we've discussed tonight, they never started in a boardroom. It wasn't just discussions on paper, somebody sending you a document that you had to regurgitate and go put it in play. A lot of these things came from the people. We learned as we went into the different communities. Each and every time we deployed somewhere else, we learned something new. Whether from the residents, we had fishermen telling us, boss, that barrier not going whole, the anchor too weak. Boss, you have to help us, our boats out there, but so we had to learn from them. And I think that's very important, that we took the learnings not just from our partners, not just from our knowledge, but we relied on the locals to, guide us. And I think equally important, as Caroline keeps mentioning, is this role of community engagement and involvement. And whereas Grace Kennedy had this wonderful, subtle approach of going into the communities and, doing the outreach, Clean Harbors had to take a more...
Aggressive?
I don't want to say aggressive, but, we had to go in full force. We were very assertive. I personally, unfortunately, have had to have, we've always reached out to the members of parliament through Grace Kennedy and their affiliates, and we've had to go in, meet with area leaders, Danman, all elements. And you'd be very surprised to see people that you'd never think would be interested in something like this coming together because they want good for their communities.
Yeah.
And that was important. They weren't too big. The same man that down the road selling at the shop, the bad man in charge, they're all willing to come together because they wanted something good. They knew it was going to be something good, not just for their community, but to build a better Jamaica. And that was important. The daily learnings, the interaction with the residents, everything kind of felt and became like family. Mm-hmm. So going into the communities now, you don't worry. You think about it initially, boy, go Seaview, go Sandy Gully, Caroline, that's dangerous, But then, now is Dean, Buju, welcome to Seaview. These guys are our unsung heroes in Sandy
Dean
Gully.
and Buju here.
Yeah, man.
Right? These guys have tirelessly done some work that I can tell you. I would compare the work that these guys are doing to the equipment that we're sending down there.
Yeah.
These guys are going out on a paddle boat because, as I keep telling you, Sandy Gully is different. You cannot send a boat into Sandy Gully. You cannot send an excavator into Sandy Gully. You cannot send anything into Sandy Gully. And what these guys did, Dean had a fishing boat. And he retrofitted and modified his fishing boat, stripping it down, removing the skin so it got lighter, just so he could get across to go and retrieve the garbage, to bring it back to shore, along with Buju, so they could harvest. And they have been doing this tirelessly day in to day. Even the guys that come and operate the excavator say, yo, you guys are good. So you have to big them up every time, right? And I think definitely it's these relationships that we've formed that have really propelled us to keep going.
Michael, I'm going to look on you in a different. I always thought you were meek and this assertive. Well, let me ask you one last question. Behind all of this innovation is a very important outcome. I think it's one of the questions on many people's mind. So reducing the amount of waste entering Kingston Harbour is the goal.
Yes.
Since this project has begun, can you give us a sense of the scale of the project's impact from the starting?
I'm going to give you verified numbers because the unverified numbers we'll all leave here tonight bewildered. So the verified numbers, we've been able to prevent over 5 million kilograms of trash since our inception.
And this is verified?
That's verified. That's equivalent to 12 million pounds of trash. Wow. And, that's a significant achievement. But what's more important is really understanding, what that number means to us. What's significant about achieving this goal? It wasn't easy. We had to work our butts off to get here, and it showed us that the problem was large. Mm-hmm. And as I was saying to you, these are verified numbers. The unverified numbers supersede these beyond your imagination. I give you a story. The hurricane was coming last year. Caroline was pressing on me, Michael, we have to protect the assets. The barriers must be secured. I said, Caroline, we work on the barriers every day, man. Them strong. Them now go mash up. Michael, if the hurricane hits, we're going to lose everything. We have to open the barriers. I said, Caroline, all right, we're going to open the little ones. No, we have to open the big ones.
She was being assertive,
She was. Sandy Gully has to be open. And I said, Caroline, we're talking about decades of garbage to let out, you know. We have amassed tons of garbage in there, Caroline. If I pull that thing, I can't sleep for days. You really want to do this to me? And I didn't. We have a camera situated at Sandy Gully, and I watched that camera through and through the hurricane, watching this barrier release and watching all this trash go out. And it was heartbreaking. I mean, what was really sad about it, though, was we lost tons of garbage. Everything washed out. You know, some stuff ended up inside the harbor, in the shipping lanes, stuck back in the mangroves, because, you know, the government would have mandated that, listen, for the preservation of the residents in the nearby communities, they were not sure if anything transpired, if the backlash would come against the project to say it caused the flooding. And for that reason, they said, please just open it.
The NAA, not Caroline.
You know, yeah, it's their mandate, and they had to do what they thought was right to protect
people.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, not only was that devastating, but then Caroline left me bewildered. And then now me and the team had to go and retrieve this barrier. It took us about 3 days to retrieve one barrier, whereas it took us about a week to install this barrier. So retrieving it was just as hard. We took days and days trying to get this thing out. And then we put it back in. Today, looking at it, you'd never think that we opened this barrier. It is rampant. It has so much garbage in there, it's almost like a flashback, like we never pulled it.
How many fridges you took out 2 weeks ago?
I mean, things that we've seen coming down. I told you about this story, right? You see, saw a couch. We have gotten everything through these gullies, from couches, the whatnot, the divan. You name it, we've gotten
Violin.
it. We've gotten violins, we've gotten baby strollers, crib. You know,
so
we've
like we're
gotten
opening a store.
Everything. And, you know, we have some of the stuff that we've gotten out on the back on display that you can see. But one of the things that really bugs me every day about Sandy Gully is fridges and washing machine. I know, so we have a lot of people that live on the island, but we're a small island. Where so much fridge come from? Dean called me one man and said, Chief, you asleep? I said, no. Man said, Bossy, 150 fridge down there now. I said, Dean, but we just take out 100 odd last week. Yeah. Him say, yeah, but 100 more come. And I can't draw no more, the place full. I said, all right. And I went down there. And every time we pull out hundreds of fridges, hundreds more keep coming back. And I am just bewildered as to why. And what we have decided to do as a team is the GKF outreach team and us, we're now amassing all these items. So we're going to try and replicate a housing look. So we're going to put up the sofa, we're going to put up the TV stand, put the TV, the washing machine, you know, everything. The car. How you going to get home without the car? Right? How you going to drive home without the car? So we're going to put everything together and then try and film it to show people to get the magnitude of how bad this, really, you know, how it really is. So, and you know, I think that all of this that I'm trying to explain to you is really what has, you know, made the project impactful. You know, the interception within this region, you know, it proved that, you know, effective pollution prevention before it gets to the marine environment is important. You know, and the charts that you're probably seeing on the screen, you know, the increase in waste reflects not just, you know, both the scale, but the challenge of our expansion. Right. Each time we grew, each time we put a barrier in, the numbers grew. I mean, I think in 2023 compared to 2025, we got like 2 million more pounds of trash just by putting in 3 more barriers. So, and, you know, we are really looking at, you know, trying to move beyond just waste removal. The project has, you know, really improved on how we structure what we're doing, but we're trying to see if we can, you know, improve more on not just the waste collection, but trying to, through Kyle and our team, get the outreach out there, educate people more. And, you know, we're seeing impacts to the harbor. You know, we have stuff coming back. We have, you know, they're starting to do regatta, which is, you know, fancy word for sailing. You have people sailing again in the harbor. You see the sailboat races going on. Yeah. You know, they had something new last year, a dragon boat tournament, a race. Never happened. And these guys were out there with these built, you know, the Chinese Benevolence Association had these handcrafted vessels out there. And I was pretty excited. I was happy to watch the videos and see turquoise water. I said, what? Where the good?
These are the signs.
You know, these are the signs that the harbor is coming back. You know, we have the fishing, the fisher folk, you know, have anecdotal data where fisher folk from Raytown have said they're getting more fish. You know, they're saying, boy, bossy, you know, the yellowtail snapper them are come back, you know, we're getting the fish. And just the other day, whilst our crew was out there maneuvering, you're seeing dolphins. You know, we haven't seen dolphins in the harbor in a long time, and to see them coming back is good. So it's a sign to show that, you know, thank you. It's important to note that, you know, which I know Professor Weber is about to come up here and wow your minds about the water quality and what it is, right? Now, it's important to note that this doesn't reflect that, yes, the water is back to pristine condition, you can jump off in there and go swim. But you have people, I mean, just recently one of my partners shared with me videos of guys doing surfing lessons out there in the harbor, which was pretty cool. You know, the guys from St. Thomas came to Kingston to do that. So these are important signs, and I know this was one of the things when Caroline and I met in 2019, and I was trying to beg her, Caroline, I really want to do something now, you know. Mm-hmm. It was important. So thank you.
So ultimately, the success is not even just by the large numbers of what you capture, but certainly measured by some of these other things that you now begin to see.
Definitely.
And we're going to hear a little bit about, you know, other ways in which we measure this success. But thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And you two stay with me as well. But before we go to our last presenter, I would like to remind everybody, as much as you're enthralled, please submit your questions if you have questions. And remember that you may do that through Slido. And on Slido, you may also view and upvote questions submitted by others. And the question receiving the most votes will be prioritized. And we'll try to address as many of them later in the program. Okay, so let us look again on the screen and take a quick look on some of this technology in action and the people.
Been officially here at Seaview since 2024. As you know, Sandy Gully is what we term in Jamaica the beast. It is the largest gully on the island, spanning over 1,000 feet wide and thousands of feet long. When I first came down here, everybody was skeptical. Oh, Seaview Gardens, you know, the stereotype, the stigma to Seaview. Oh, Seaview Gardens. And I must say, I myself shared that thought. The passion that I saw come out of these guys, and today I still see that same passion hasn't diminished, and their job isn't easy. These guys have showed me that it doesn't take a lot of people to make an impact. It just takes the right amount of people. This is what it means to be Jamaica. Different lives, different livelihoods. But we're all here trying to accomplish one unified goal.
We're a part of the project. We are proud to be a part of the project. And we are doing it to make sure that we are helping to bring it back. And this is not a one-man problem. It's not me and Dean's problem. It's we as a people. Now, we as Jamaicans, we all have to come together. We have to unite together. And if we love Jamaica, we have to take care of it. We have to keep it clean.
I am asking you all not to throw the tree limbs or anything like that into the gully.
Innovation in action.
So we have one last question to ask. You see, beyond engineering and operation lies this other important question. How do we measure whether the harbor is actually changing?
Yeah.
And true, for decades, scientists have monitored Kingston Harbor and documented its environmental decline, while also helping us understand what recovery could look like. They're using new tools. And to help us guide us through the science and some of these tools and what the science is revealing, it is my pleasure to introduce our final presenter. Head of the Department of Life Sciences at the University of the West Indies, Mona, and the Grace Kennedy Foundation's James Mosolomon Senior Chair in Environment. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Mona Weber. Prof. Mona, welcome.
Thank you.
I want to ask you to start by telling us, was there ever a time when the Kingston Harbour was not as it was today? If yes, give us an idea of what the baseline was then, and then tell us how did the baseline evolve up to the start of the project.
Thank you for that question. A baseline is critical, and an evolving baseline is even more interesting. Kingston Harbour, as I said last time in the lecture, is a real treasure. Significant, tremendous national importance. And we have had maps from the 1700s or before that show you the extent of the systems, the ecosystems in the harbour. And so Kingston Harbour used to have over 1,000 hectares, that's over 2,000 acres of seagrasses, and again, 900 hectares of mangroves, and very importantly, clean waters. You could see these systems. And the university has established a marine lab on the mouth of the harbour in Port Royal. And the Port Royal Marine Lab researchers from as early as the 1960s started sounding the alarm. The water quality of Kingston Harbour was being affected by sewage. And in 1965, Kingston Harbour had its first red tide. They called it a red water bloom, and it led to fish kills, and it was in the harbour head. There are a lot of red tides now occurring in the harbour head. In 1965, that was the first recorded red tide. In fact, Ivan Goodbody, who is a noted researcher from those days, I quote him, "Probably the most serious danger to Kingston Harbour at this time is the danger of pollution, either from sewage or industrial waste." So from about the early 1900s to 1965, we were seeing degradation in Kingston Harbour. The real research into I would call it maybe our first indication of solid waste, really started with Barry Wade. Now, he first noted the increasing organic pollution of Kingston Harbour. And he was worried about the water quality, but more importantly, he noted that the sediments of the harbour were beginning to be affected. Pollution in the water column, pollution in the waters will settle into the sediments. And so Kingston Harbour started to have low oxygen or no oxygen zones. We call them anoxic zones. And he identified interesting pollution indicators, a small marine worm called Capitella capitata. And you will meet that name again.
Say it one more time.
Capitella capitata. That's the genus and the species name.
Okay.
And this worm often looks blood red because it has pigments to help it get oxygen from these low oxygen areas. Dr. Wade, interestingly, in 1972 was the first to document solid waste. And he noted near the causeway that there was tires and other debris that were accumulating in the area. And so in no time, the Kingston Harbour had really deteriorated from this pristine area of the 1700s to close to what we see now. But you talk about baselines and you talk about measurements, and the first real baseline indicating quantities of trash, quantities of plastics affecting the harbour was a study done by Barbara Chow and Kamala Tolan, persons who helped teach me when I was a student. And they looked, interestingly, at a small mangrove island, they call it, that they noted was being affected by this garbage. They noted, and this is really the first baseline, first measurement of the amount of plastics coming into the harbour. Refuge Quay was receiving 2.75 tons of waste. That's over 6,000 pounds of waste. And this was household waste. And this waste was moving from the edge of the quay and going 7 meters into the quay, about 22 feet. And that's significant because the garbage penetrates into the forest and often remains in the forest. And 52% of this was plastic. Wow. And so that's our first indication of the dominance of plastic in our waste stream getting into the harbor. And they thought it was coming, they indicated by the arrows you see on the slide, it was coming from Hunts Bay, where Sandy Gully enters. Ah. So as we got closer to the start of this project, in 2021, we had the Keem project, and the MGI team helped us to get a visual of the gullies. Those are the blue lines on the slide. And the concentration of waste along all the gullies. And of course, when they empty into the harbor, the waste ends up on the south shore of the harbor in the mangroves. And the Keem project clearly identified that the gullies were a source, and this was impacting Kingston Harbor and its mangroves. So when this project started, you know, it was clear that we were in trouble in terms of the amount of plastics. But what is critical, we knew we were getting a lot of garbage, tons of garbage. But this project, the Clean Kingston Harbor project, was the first to actually quantify the amount of plastics and garbage that was coming into the Kingston Harbor system. Over, as they say, over 5 million kilograms of garbage. And that's a significant baseline.
So a very valuable aspect of the project is just the data in terms of establishing some kind of baseline. I want to ask you about, you know, how you now are studying the health, but just before that, you mentioned about mangroves, and in fact, you start by talking about what existed and then what declines, and we have heard this mangrove very often. Just for those of us listening, how important are mangroves, you know, to Jamaica's environment and economic future?
Thank you for that question. I love to talk about mangroves.
Remember, I was lenient with Caroline, but no, please tell us.
So Kingston Harbor and its mangroves have been valued at over $510 million a year. Wow. That was done in 2019 through a World Bank project we had that helped us look at the range of indices that we can use to value such a system. And so it's the mangroves' ability to offer storm protection, to mitigate flooding, to support fisheries. And very important for us at the UE and for the research we're doing right now, it indicated the significance of the blue carbon associated with these mangrove forests. So mangrove forests have tremendous ecological and economic value. Okay. And the idea was to try and capture all of these. So we came up with the term ecosystem services, which is a combination of the ecological and economic value. And there are over 200 ecosystem services. So we talk about regulating the flow of nutrients, the flow of fresh water and sediments. That's a very important service that the mangroves provide. Right. Supporting biodiversity, fisheries, that's another ecosystem service. And then providing food. And the last one is important to us as individuals, the cultural services. That's right. Recreation and education, just a place to be close to nature, a relatively safe space if there are no crocs. But the harbor is extremely valuable globally. Harbors and their mangroves are extremely valuable systems.
Okay, all right. So based now upon what you do, the science, we heard, you know, Michael giving us some ideas, you know, based on his sense of what he does, you know. He gave us an idea of what the difference the project is making. Based upon the science, Has the Kingston Harbour Cleanup Project made a difference to the health of the harbour? What does the science say?
That's an interesting question. The Kingston Harbour Cleanup Project must have made a difference, because to have held back so much garbage, you know, almost or over 5 million kilograms of garbage, this must have made a difference to the system. And so the science now is catching up, because it takes time. It takes time for mangrove forests to regenerate. I will tell you a story later on about a mangrove forest that has regenerated. But it takes time, 5 years minimum, for these systems to grow. And so it's a little early for the science to pinpoint the difference.
Okay.
But perhaps our best example of how we expect this project to make a difference is Refuge Key. But before I talk about Refuge Key, I want to talk a little bit about what we measure. We tend to use the extent of the ecosystem. So the extent of the mangrove forest is a sign of health. Because we're dealing with plastics, and we know plastics damage mangroves, we measure the area of mangroves, whether it's increasing or decreasing, to give a good idea of the health of the ecosystem. And during the KEEM project, the Mona Geoinformatics team were able to help us to use imagery to determine really a health index, for the mangroves. Because you can have areas of mangroves, but the mangroves may be unhealthy. The density may be low, the leaves may be yellowing. And so the image you see on the right is an idea of a health index using color. So the greens indicate dense, healthy mangroves. The reds indicate where the health is poor.
Quite innovative. But you were going to tell us a little bit about Refuge Key. You had said, is it a good example?
It's a good example, but before I get to Refuge Key,
okay.
I want to mention what else we measure.
All right.
And this is critical, because you're talking about baselines and you're talking about science.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to miss.
No, man, please, please, please.
So as early as Jared Aleng in 1998 did his master's looking at changes in Kingston Harbour and how we could manage those changes. But he looked at the extent of the harbour mangroves and how those mangroves had changed using historical maps, how those mangroves had changed for 300 years, and they were stable. There was minimal change. His research showed that between 1991 and 2018, we lost 30% of the mangrove cover. So extent is a good measure. Goodbody also looked at biodiversity, at the number of species the area is supposed to be able to support. And biodiversity is good if healthy systems have high biodiversity. And he counted over 1,000 species of organisms in Kingston Harbour. And so we now have students who are looking at contaminants. Devaney Leo looked at heavy metals in the mangrove oysters. And we also are looking at microplastics. We have looked at microplastics in the water column. Microplastics in the sediment is literally now being looked at by Robin Young. And so we are introducing new measures, but we're also keeping some of the old indices that we've always relied on. I also want to mention blue carbon.
Okay.
Because we measure area and we know mangroves remove carbon. So as
I think we also need to connect online.
We're good?
Are you online yet? Not yet.
So thank you, Prof. Mona. I think what you have begun, what you have told us is we have some measures: forest area, health, certainly biodiversity, contaminants, and then you have just introduced the whole concept of the blue carbon as well. All right, so is the project making a difference?
Okay.
Use these measures now. We have these measures.
Now I get to the refugee story. I don't know if our graphics will come back up.
Yes, the monitor is off. We're trying to tell you the monitor is off. Yeah.
That's okay, but...
Right.
Yeah, graphics are
it's
there?
on the screen.
That's fine.
Tell us about starting with the mangroves.
So Refuge Key, as mentioned, and as you can see, historically, it's been an island of focus. It's the only island, mangrove island, in the harbor. All the other mangrove areas are connected to the road or to the mainland somehow. So it's critically important for species like birds, because the rats and the mongoose can't get to that key to get the eggs. So Refuge Key was losing its forest. Up to 2018, we had lost a third of the forest on Refuge Key. And we realized that this was because there was a berm. Literally, the edge of Refuge Key had a barrier of plastics.
Oh.
And so mangrove forests need flushing. They need the flow of water from the forest. They need to breathe. And this plastic mound was preventing water from leaving or flowing onto the forest efficiently. And so through funding from the Kingston Freeport Terminal Limited and through partners like GDSS, we were able to clean, and how could I forget, 24 dedicated fishers. It took them 6 weeks.
Wow.
And some of the items, like the freezers and so on, were so big they had to tow behind their boats. But they stuck to the job, and as you can see, Refuge Key was cleaned. The removal of plastics has led to the regeneration of that forest. And the Kingston Harbour Cleanup Project also aided in reducing the volume of plastics coming onto the quay, and JET, another set of partners, do regular cleanup on Refuge Key with the help of the Port Royal Marine Lab. So those interventions, the KEEM project did channels to help improve the water flow, and those interventions, collective work, has led to the regeneration of I'm not sure which slide you're seeing, but the Refuge Key in 2018 had lost almost a third of its forest. By 2023, the forest was coming back. We did very little mangrove planting. We simply allowed the water flow to be regained. The hydrology was restored. And by 2026, Refuge Key is almost recovered.
And I think the pictures on the screen tell that story.
And notice that's 8 years.
Yes.
This project has been going for 5 years. And Refuge Key is not completely healed. It still has some forest area to be covered. So it takes time before you see results. But through the combined efforts of community and all the partners and funding, this is what we will see as the evidence of improvement in the harbour. This is what we are to expect from the Clean Kingston Harbour project.
Prof, let me just ask you one last question. This is fantastic. This is the hope. This is the results. This is, why both our previous guests do especially what they do. But in what you're saying, putting on my science hat, I hear you talking and alluding to a data gap. How can we fill this data gap? Is there new science or new things that will allow us to establish a new baseline which we can follow going forward?
There is indeed.
Okay.
Very exciting new project we have embarked on, again funded by the Ocean Cleanup. For the first time in Jamaica, we're doing eDNA, environmental DNA assessments of a marine area. So it's a 3-year project. We've only completed a year. But the environmental DNA work is showing some exciting trends. Now, environmental DNA is about indicating diversity. In a system like the Kingston Harbor, size and complexity, it's very difficult to accurately determine number of species. How do you count all the species associated with Kingston Harbor? Well, this is where the technology comes in. Poor Goodbody had to literally count.
He had to literally go in and,
we now
and
have
count and figure out.
The technology that allows us to collect water. The team have been out into the harbor collecting water and sediments from 4 areas primarily, 4 stations. So one has to be Refuge Key.
Yes.
One is our control. It's a pristine site in Fort Rocky Lagoon that we expect to be clean. One is a gunboat beach site, and then one is the Palisadoes replanting area. And what these data are showing us right away, there are the number of fish species across these sites. Refuge Key has the greatest number of fish species associated with its waters. Okay. And the lowest numbers are towards Gunboat Beach and the Palisadoes. Notice the pristine site didn't have the greatest number of fish, but the pristine site had the greatest number of sediment organisms. And Refuge Key did not. In fact, Refuge Key's sediments are in poor condition. So right away, we're getting species counts. It can give you birds. It can give you fungi. The eDNA, once you've collected the water and they run the sequencing, you can get almost every taxon of organisms from these data. It's amazing. And they are also able to tell us what is happening in the wet and dry season. And important for us, they have a pollution index. So their pollution index is showing that Refuge Key sediments, the right-hand side, has poor conditions, and the indicator species they're identifying is Capitella capitata. Same one identified by Barry Wade. And the pristine site has good filter feeders, had healthy organisms in its sediments. So putting that all together very quickly, Refuge Key actually has high commercial value because of the rich fish species that you're finding in the air. The range of fish, perhaps that's where some of the snapper is being seen. The pristine site has low pollution index, high quality of indicator species. Gunboat Beach is said to be worst overall, and the eDNA identified it as a fragmented system, and we know why. And finally, the pollution, the restoration site is said to be a stable environment, which is a good sign for your restoration area. So excellent data that matches the science we've been doing before, but doing it in a much easier way.
This eDNA sounds fantastic.
It's amazing.
How long is this project that you are doing?
Just 3 years.
And how long should we be going on?
Maybe 10.
So we're looking for funders for...
We would love, it's very expensive to
science.
do eDNA work.
Absolutely. Thank you, Prof. Mona. Thank you very much. It's clear, from what you have said, that science doesn't way more than just document environment decline. It also helps us recognize the possibility of recovery. And I think we actually have a video. So, ladies and gentlemen, this evening we have heard about vision and partnerships, technology and operations, and science and research. But we couldn't end without, asking just a few more important questions. One clearly has to do with lessons learned. What lessons can Jamaica and perhaps even the wider Caribbean region and world take away from this entire experience? Just spend a few minutes and just tell me one key lesson each of you learned from the Kingston Harbor Cleanup Project. I am going to start with Caroline.
Sure. I think the big lesson for me is the role that the private sector can play in moving ideas to action. So for many years, as you heard, there was excellent research done. The scientists had sounded the alarm, the reports existed, but what was missing was how to move this concern to action. And this project demonstrates that the role that the private sector has done to achieve this. You know, a private sector entity moves, there's accountability, measurable outcomes, and we have a built-in infrastructure that can really make a difference. And I think that model has worked very well. As a corporate foundation, we're able to bridge a lot of the sectors, so the government, the communities, academia, funders, the technical partners, that builds trust and momentum. And the thing that we've really, the big lesson has been that we have not approached this from an antagonistic kind of view. We've really worked hard at building partnerships and collaboration, and that's really worked extremely well.
So the power of the private sector and the power of partnerships again. Yeah. Michael, what about you? Biggest lesson, thinking about the technology and the operational side?
I think it would be contextual innovation. You know, it's important to note that, you know, this idea of, or the concept of contextual innovation is that the idea of just importing a solution and thinking it's going to work isn't the be all. You know, you don't expect it to work perfectly and completely because Jamaica's environment is different. You know, we got the technology from overseas and they thought, as I said earlier, plug and play. But everything in Jamaica proved to be unique. The gullies are unique. The debris is unique. You know, everything was different. And whilst the technology gave us this really strong starting point, you know, the real work was trying to adapt it to suit Jamaica. And that was important to note. And what's even more important to note, and what I'm proud of, is that the innovation happened here. Yes. You know, they sent it here thinking it would work, but we here as the locals had to adapt and get it working. And that not only taught us, but it taught them that, you know, that's why they're expanding the way they are. They realize that learning from us in Jamaica allowed them to expand to this 30 cities initiative that they're now doing. You know, it's very important to note that not just our operators, but the captains, the technicians, all the field engineers and the teams, you know, where they continuously modified and refined these systems. And it was a life-changing experience, and every day was a learning curve for us. And, you know, it's an important lesson about the innovation and to understand that the environment and how you're building it, you have to trust the people. Yes. You have to rely on the expertise of not just your own knowledge, but those that you interface with every day. And that's an important thing to note.
Can't miss that important lesson about the contextual innovation. It's Jamaica to the world.
That's right.
And Prof. Mona, from the science side.
For me, the critical lesson is the value of science in guiding environmental decision making.
Yes.
The research will show us the scale of the problem. It will identify the sources of pollution and how they affect these critical ecosystems. It's how we measure change and measure it accurately. Because without baselines, without the monitoring, without sometimes long-term data, we can't really define real change, and we can't tell if our innovations are working. It's important to us that we can show and use science to indicate that recovery is possible. And it's more convincing. We want to be convinced that we're making a difference, but you also want to be convinced that all this activity is actually resulting in something. Because when you're convinced, you're more likely to fund more or to get involved or to understand what you can do to help. So the pick of the lessons for me is environmental action must remain evidence-based.
So we have gone from the past and we are up to the present. Certainly one of the last questions I want to ask you would be, 10 years from now, are we all swimming in a clean and pristine Kingston Harbor? Let us look to the future. What do you envision 10 years from now, and what still needs to happen to get us there? Prof. Moan, I'm going to start with you this time.
You know where I'm going to start. 10 years from now, I want to see more mangroves.
Yes.
The mangroves are filterers. If you get more mangroves, you're more likely to get clean waters.
Yes.
But the mangrove forests really need to regenerate and to be healthy. Refuge Key is a good example, but there's a large area of lost forest, bare area on Gallows Point. It's about the size of Refuge Key, about 8 hectares. And so I would love to see interventions for that area. It means removing the plastics. There's a lot of what we call legacy plastic, old plastic that has been taken meters. The team will tell you when they run a 100-meter transect, they will see plastic bottles all the way up to 50 meters, sometimes the whole 100 meters into the forest. And so it's hard, but I would like us within the next, I hope less than 10 years, to remove those plastics before they become microplastics. And they hinder, they prevent the forests from regenerating as much as we'd like. So recovery doesn't happen overnight. 10 years is a nice figure because forests will recover in that timeline. I would like to see the eDNA work to continue. If it's not twice a year as we're doing it now, maybe once a year, long into the future. So we really have the historical change and a good long-term evidence of the richness that comes back to Kingston Harbor. So these are critical information that will help us to manage our waste and to help guide policy. And I would like us to get to that point where we use these data to help guide policy to make a change.
Michael, what about you? 10 years from now, out of a job?
Hopefully. This is the one job that you have or the one business that you try and do, with this project that you're hoping that you're working to put yourself out of a job. You don't want to keep seeing garbage. Right. You don't want to keep seeing pollution. We live here. Nobody would want to see that. And I think, it's going to be hard, as, Prof. Weber said. It's going to be really hard. But we also would hope that, within that 10 years, we would have been able to expand to other areas. I know that you have places like Montego Bay, Falmouth, Ocho Rios, all these other, and here we have the mayor from Montego Bay. He came all this way, Thank you. And I think, there, even the wider Caribbean, when we just started out Clean Harbors, we used to get all these emails, St. Lucia, Cayman, all these places having issues. So it's important to know that we're not the only ones facing the problem. And, in 10 years, I would love to see improvements in the marine waste management sector and what we're doing. But at the same time, as I said, the reality is that I want to see a reduction. I would love to see less interception. Yes. So 10 years' time, I'm hoping that for the generation that comes after me and those to come, we'll see a Jamaica that I never got a chance to see. Cleaner waters, right?
And you, Caroline?
Sure. So I think we've known from the start that this downstream strategy that we've implemented will not solve the problem. It's a Band-Aid, and we know that, but it's necessary right now. So I think over the next 10 years, what I would love to see is broader systemic change, stronger waste management systems and infrastructure. I appreciate GDSS and their partnership with us on this project, but we need to solve the upstream problems. And, the waste is coming from way up the top of these gullies, and we need them collected, and we need the infrastructure necessary for that to be addressed. It requires increased government investment and ownership to foster the behavior, and also we need greater behavioral change, okay? So we know that. I mean, I do not like the fact that Michael stops when somebody's throwing something out there when he's driving them down Just put it, pick up your. We need to not be nasty. We need to not throw our garbage in the wrong places. So I think that's really, really important over the next 10 years. And just get the systems and the partnerships and the awareness and the national commitment to solve the upstream problems. That's what's important to me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Caroline, Michael, and Mona. So as we're closing out this lecture segment, let me just ask you one final question.
The final one.
I assure you it's a final one from me. There are government partners out there in the audience and watching online, corporate leaders, students, communities, citizens, all watching and really have engaged with this lecture. How can they be a part of the next chapter of this project? Mona, you want to start again?
Sure. And you know what I'm going to say. Be a scientist.
Absolutely.
If you can't be a scientist, be a citizen scientist, help us gather data, or be a scientist at heart. And by that, I mean value science and trust the science. We need to use science. We'll never become a STEM nation if we don't value and use the science. Become informed, learn about how one individual action can cascade to cause significant damage and how we can damage these ecosystems. So learn about what our actions can do and how our actions can also solve some of these problems. Be hopeful. I want us to leave here being hopeful. I also want us to be patient because Kingston Harbour didn't get to this state overnight, and it is going to take time to clean it up and to see the change. But I want persons to envision a clean Kingston Harbour. I looked it up. Vision means a thing seen, and vision means to cause a thing seen. I want us together to envision a clean Kingston Harbour and what we can do to return this amazing system to its former glory and full value.
Thank you very much. Michael, those out there, how do they become a part?
I mean, everybody can play a part, Become your own champion. Be a hero. There was this really great cartoon in the early 90s, late 80s, Captain Planet. He encouraged everyone to become a planeteer. Do what you can do for the environment. Try and be your own local hero. Instead of just throwing away the garbage, missing the dumpster, you're not picking it up, throwing it out the window, stuff like that. It starts at home. You have to do things at the source. You have to stem it from the beginning. So, it's very important, to try and not just have these interception solutions, but also have some sort of change in the mindset of the people. It's very important that people try and do their own championing.
So be a scientist, be a waste superhero. And for you, Caroline.
Become a partner. We need local ownership of the project. I am very grateful to the Ocean Cleanup and the incredible support that they provided. Originally, they were supposed to be here for 2 years. They're still here, and we expect them to be here for another couple of years at least. But we need to take national ownership of this project. For this project to expand, I know the mayor from Montego Bay is here because Montego Bay has been begging us to come down there. And I know the business community there will support it. I am convinced of that because locally we have to have that mindset. We want to get our country clean. So I think we need to just change the focus and not just say, this is a Grace Kennedy issue or an ocean cleanup issue. It's a national issue. It's a Jamaican issue. The project, when we clean up our harbor and when we clean up our coastline, it has an impact on the shipping industry. It has an impact on tourism, on the coastal communities. So it is a Jamaican issue, and we all need to come on board. Basic things like you can adopt one of the interceptors.
Adopt a gully.
I don't even call it a gully. I say adopt a barrier. Partner with other private sector entities and adopt a barrier. What is the cost to maintain that barrier until we get the upstream solutions in place? So that's what I'd encourage us all to do.
Partnership, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been enthralled. Professor Mona Weber, Mr. Michael McCarthy, Mrs. Caroline Mahfood. A wonderful evening we have had with them. Though we have gone on a little long, we do have a few questions, and I hope you'll allow me just to ask some of them from those online. But thank you so much for what you have already shared with us. I'm going to start with a question. Well, a number of them are very similar, and I'm going to start with a question by Dane, who I think captures many of the other questions. And you heard it, and I think we have begun to address it. Are we making enough progress in reducing the source of the plastics? And is this being seen in the amount of plastics being intercepted? So, of course, the background to the question would be that we have implemented a plastic ban policy. The question is a result of doing so showing up in the project? Anybody, Michael, you look like you wanted to start there.
I mean, in what we're seeing as we're intercepting daily, we're not seeing a reduction in plastics. What we're seeing is a difference in the type of plastics. So we're not seeing as much plastic bags, we're not seeing many styrofoam, but now you're finding these plastic lunch boxes, these new plastic containers and other stuff. So it's not that there's a reduction per se. What we're seeing is different types.
Okay.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. Because our monitoring in the mangroves, since NEPA started the plastic ban, they started with bags, scandal bags, and progressed to styrofoam and so on. You immediately saw the lessening of plastic bags in the mangroves, and those are particularly damaging for the roots of the mangroves. So it was heartening to see. So indeed, Michael is right. The types of wastes have changed, but maybe not necessarily the quantity.
So the quantities still need to be addressed, but certainly there is some improvement there. Prof. Mona, let me stay with you then. A question from Takis. What is the greatest environmental risk to the harbor that we may be currently underestimating? Can you think of?
That's an interesting question. Complete loss of the mangroves. The mangroves protect the city of Kingston.
Yeah.
That strip of land with the vegetation on it, it mitigates, it can help reduce normal wave action, and certainly storm surges are lessened by the presence of those mangroves. And without that, the city is threatened. The infrastructure and the businesses, 1,700 businesses on the shores of the harbor, are significantly threatened. And also without that, the kind of high energy waves that the seagrasses and the other ecosystems in the harbor would experience would damage them. They're used to shelter. So you lose that barrier, you lose the protection for the city, and you lose the protection for the ecosystem as well.
Caroline, a question for you. How much does all this cost? Wouldn't it be cheaper, and it's from Anonymous, wouldn't it be cheaper to improve garbage collection in Kingston and St. Andrew and have a sustained education and enforcement campaign?
That's a great question, and I think that's a question for the government of Jamaica. Because at the end of the day, garbage collection is their responsibility, right? No, that's a really good question, seriously. So far, we've spent over $5 million intercepting garbage, the barriers, the boats, and we've barely scratched the surface at Sandy Gully. When we fix Sandy Gully, hopefully this year, we'll be hitting probably 10 million kilograms of waste.
I mean, we've only gotten 5%,
yes.
if I'm looking.
So it is a costly venture, and yes, I agree. I think addressing the upstream, as I said, addressing the upstream garbage collection strategy is critical. My philosophy has always been, we're a small enough island, and Kingston in particular, where this project is is a small enough city that we should be able to figure it out. We know the gully networks, we know where the hot spots are for the waste, and I think we just need to be a lot more strategic in how we address that.
And you know, Caroline, 5 million may sound like a lot, but what we have heard is the value, the multiplying value of what that 5 million investment. It is a recovery of the harbor and the beginning of seeing new activities in the harbor. It's a drop in the bucket compared to the impact that this project has had.
When we did our strategic plan, we estimated just for feasibility studies that it would cost $8 million US.
Michael, a quick question for you. Somebody online wants to know, what's the story of the pink coach?
So we've gotten so many different coaches, and for some strange reason, Dean and Buju thought this one stood out. It was bright. You know, it was actually, the sun has really done a toll on it, but this thing was neon pink. I've never actually seen a neon pink coach. I'm not sure where it came from, but it washed up and it was there just floating around, and they pulled it out and say, we're not sure this one in a chief. We want to build a story around it, and that's why we kept it.
Okay.
So we've been retaining that coach for a story to come.
It will be in the house.
It will be in the house.
It will be in the
Yes,
house.
it will be
All
there.
right. Just to round us off, you have touched on this several times. Clearly, public education, behavior change becomes very important.
Yeah.
Based on each of your unique experiences, do you have any suggestions or things about how we change the mindset without waiting 2 to 3 generations?
I mean, I can start.
Sure.
I would like Suzanne Nam to stand up. She's our corporate communications manager, but she also used to be the executive director at JET.
Jet.
And that T-shirt she's wearing, No Dirty Up Jamaica, says it all. That was a great campaign. I would love that campaign or something similar to come back. I felt like it really communicated so well that it was each of us had a responsibility to manage our waste respectfully and not just think that, you know, if I dump it somewhere, it will just disappear. It comes to us. It comes to Michael and his team. So I think that's critical. I think reinstating that campaign or getting something similar to that going would really help the Jamaican public to refocus their minds and hearts.
Anything else?
Education.
I think education.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. It starts with the young ones and working your way up. I don't know if anybody here recalls, but in schools, you know, in elementary school, basic school, whatever you want to call it, they used to expect children at the end of the day before your parents picked you up or you had to go home. You had to do these bits of paper lying on the ground. Yes. Everybody had to clean up before you left class. And that was important. And I think that kind of, it's just, you know, those simple little things, similar to this campaign, you know, those simple little innovative things in the minds of kids. They will go home and tell their parents, and you'd be surprised at how impactful children can be to their parents.
And Caroline told us about that earlier.
Yeah,
right?
So
absolutely.
Teach the young ones and let them carry it forth.
So education, and education by all stakeholders, not just the formal education system, but also the communities, the churches, the parents,
everywhere.
Education. All right. I think one last question from online. Amazing lecture, they say. And again, this is anonymous. The level of achievement is almost intimidating. Any lessons for people who want to clean up waterways, but on smaller scales in smaller towns?
That's a great question.
Find the problem. What's the source?
Go look for the source.
Find the source. And we knew right away we were dealing with the gullies. Find the source and stop at source, and then begin to deal with the body of water, what you need to do to have it regenerate. And many of our natural ecosystems, we saw this during COVID. People were reporting that the harbor waters were clear. Once you stop the inputs, the system will regenerate. It's very encouraging how quickly the natural system regenerates.
It's actually, it's interesting that you mentioned COVID, because post-COVID is where I saw an increase in the plastic.
Oh, yes.
Tons and tons of plastic drinking bottles. I don't know if we were thirsty during COVID and we came out and we decided to go, crazy, but the amount of plastic bottles that have been coming down, it cannot be fathomed. It's crazy,
I would say, you can always contact us.
Yes.
We'll happily help. I mean, we're going to produce a magazine at the end of this lecture that will be distributed in another few weeks that kind of share all the learnings we have. But you can always contact the foundation, and I'm going to say you can always contact Clean Harbors Jamaica.
Right.
And we'll happily share the model and what works and what hasn't worked. I don't think we should reinvent the wheel.
Absolutely.
So using the lessons that we have learned throughout this fantastic project. I'm going to say thank all the persons online and in the audience who have shared their questions. Thank you very much for your thoughtful questions. And ladies and gentlemen, I want you to give one final round of applause to our lecturers. Thoughtful, insightful, many lessons learned. But what we have learned is the power of partnership, certainly the power of local innovation, and the power of science. And when we bring that all together, as done in this project, what a transformative result can happen. So at this time, I'm going to hand over to Professor Julie Meeks-Gardner, Chair of the Grace Kennedy Foundation, and invite her to the podium.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Yes. Good evening, everyone. So before we conclude, the Grace Kennedy Foundation would like to extend its sincere appreciation to our presenters and moderator for sharing their time, expertise, and passion with us this evening. Through their insights, we have been reminded that the future of Kingston Harbor depends on partnerships, innovation, scientific research, and a shared commitment to action. I would like to invite Mr. Frank James to come on stage and help me to deliver a token of gratitude to each of our presenters and to our moderator. And so everybody is on stage, right? And moderator. So one more time for everybody, so that wasn't the final for Taylor. Now, before we proceed to the final segment, we kindly ask all attendees to take a few moments to complete the brief post-lecture survey. Your feedback is truly valuable to us, and it will help improve future Grace Kennedy Foundation events. The survey can be accessed by scanning the QR code. Here we go. Now displayed on the screen. I trust you know how to scan. For virtual attendees, the survey link has also been shared in the YouTube chat. So we encourage you to complete the survey before leaving this evening. Don't say you'll do it tomorrow, because chances are. Finally, it is my pleasure to invite Professor the Honorable Gordon Shirley, our esteemed chairman of the Grace Kennedy Limited, to deliver closing remarks. Prof. Shirley, you want to come up this way? Podium? Podium. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Professor Meeks. I know the evening is long, and I have very brief prepared presentation notes, but I wanted to just pause to say a very special word of thanks to some people I think Caroline would have mentioned, some of these, and they go back to the chairman who had the foresight to start the Grace Kennedy Foundation. But this particular project, when you see the results, you think it's an easy decision to make. But I recall, Caroline, the soul searching that we had to do, and were it not for Fred Kennedy and the fortitude and his vision of saying, we can take on a project as big as this. Grace Kennedy doesn't like to fail, and you look at that harbor and you say, well, we're going to really try to clean that up. It took great courage to do it, and Fred and yourself led that, Caroline. Don Webby had to put resources, make decisions about sustaining a program that would be multi-year. And of course, Frank James, who you saw a while ago, has continued that process of funding. As we bring this evening's lecture to a close, I would first like to express sincere appreciation to Professor Michael Taylor, whose thoughtful moderation has helped frame today's discussion in a way that challenges all of us to think deeply and to act decisively. Can we give him a round of applause? To our outstanding presenters, Mrs. Caroline Mahfood, Mr. Michael McCarthy, and Professor Mona Weber, thank you for helping us to understand not only the scale of the challenge facing Kingston Harbor, but about the progress that is possible through sustained partnership, innovation, and scientific leadership. This evening, Caroline reminded us that meaningful environmental change requires the resolve to move from discussion to action, and that the private sector has an important role to play in helping to convene and sustain national initiatives such as this one. Michael demonstrated that innovation is most effective when it is adapted to local realities. The solutions being implemented in Kingston Harbor are not simply imported systems, as he has reminded us, but technologies and operations continuously being refined through Jamaican expertise, experience, and ingenuity. Thank you, Michael. And Mona reminded us of the critical role of scientific research, not only in helping us to understand the environmental decline, but also in helping us measure and recognize the signs of recovery already taking place within the harbor. What is especially encouraging is that this evening's discussion reflected not only the scale of the challenge, but also the measurable progress already being made. As chairman of the Port Authority of Jamaica, I can say that the future of Kingston Harbor matters deeply to all of us. It is central to Jamaica's economy, shipping industry, environmental resilience, and national identity. And its protection cannot rest with any single organization or project alone. Since its inception, the Port Authority has been proud to support the operations of the Kingston Harbor Cleanup Project. At the same time, this evening also reminds us that there is still much more that is to be done, and many more partnerships that can be formed. And so, I want to reinforce a point raised earlier this evening, that it is not simply a Grace Kennedy Foundation issue, or a Clean Harbor Jamaica issue, or the ocean cleanup issue. This is a Jamaican issue that requires continued national ownership, partnership, and investment. The sustainability and expansion of this work will depend on the government agencies, private sector entities, communities, researchers, and citizens contributing to the work together, continuing to work together, and sharing the vision for the Kingston Harbor. Whether you were here in this room or joining us through the live stream, I urge you to take what you have heard this evening and turn it into action. share the message, support the project, and most importantly, acknowledge that each of us has a role to play in protecting Kingston Harbor for future generations. If we maintain that commitment, then I believe we can move forward to a future where Kingston Harbor is once again recognized not only as an economic asset, but as a thriving environmental and national treasure. Thank you for joining us this evening, and thank you for being a part of the next chapter in this journey. A recording of this evening's lecture, as you've heard, will be available on the Grace Kennedy YouTube channel, and I invite you to rewatch at your convenience. For those who want to go further than the lecture allowed, a publication covering the project is in progress with greater depth and is coming out soon, free of charge on Grace Kennedy Limited's website. Keep an eye out for it. Before I conclude, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the extraordinary contribution of the Ocean Cleanup and the founder and CEO, Boyan Slack. At a time when many viewed plastic pollution as an overwhelmingly global challenge, the Ocean Cleanup demonstrated that bold idea, backed by science, innovation, and determination, that together those could identify practical solutions. Their willingness to invest in Jamaica and to partner with local stakeholders has helped to transform what began as a vision into a project with measurable impact. We are deeply grateful for their confidence in Jamaica, their continued support of the Kingston Harbor Cleanup Project, and for their commitment in ensuring that this solution they developed deliver meaningful results. I also need to acknowledge the sustaining work of the Grace Kennedy Foundation team in planning and executing this event. Caroline specifically asked that I recognize Jade Ashley Carberry Meikle, who served as the lead organizer for this year's lecture. She, along with the entire Grace Kennedy Foundation team, has once again delivered an exceptional event. Congratulations and sincere thanks to all involved for putting together another outstanding lecture. Lastly, if you haven't yet done so, they asked about 10 minutes ago, so I hope you have all scanned and please complete the post-lecture survey, as your feedback is invaluable in helping the foundation to improve our future events. The link is on your programs, and the QR code has been on the screen and is still on the screen. Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us, and please enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you very much.